Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining in. This video is going to be about 12 minutes and 45 seconds long, so feel free to jump around. But this is going to be about making a bezel cup setting with a purple turquoise stone. And right now I'm fitting the bezel wire to the stone to make sure it's the right length, and I'm going to use my Sharpie to mark where I need to cut. Okay, I'm gonna cut the excess off, and number one reason why we wear safety glasses, right there, things can go flying sometimes. So I'm gonna meet those ends together as best I can, make sure they fit nice and flush. I'm gonna set up my third arm to hold that piece while I solder those ends together. Put the excess away in my little organizer. And I'm gonna paint it with Flux so that way my solder flows in the seams, and it also protects it from fire stain. Here I use solder chips. They're pre-cut chips that I buy. You'll see me placing them ever so delicately. I like to make sure that that charcoal block is lined up nice and behind the piece, so that way the heat can sort of bounce back from behind and heat it from behind as well. Alright, so that is nice and soldered together. I'm going to cool it off with a little bit of cold water there, and then I'm going to fit it back into my stone, just a triple check that it fits that stone perfectly. And I like to use soft pliers to do this, especially when the stone is square, because it just takes 2 pinches and you have a perfect fit. Okay, that's my back plate. Gonna put a little flux on that as well. Again, that's so the solder flows where I need it to, and makes a nice seam, as well as protects it from any fire stain. Back to the solder, and I'm intricately placing those chips along the inside wall of the bezel. And I'm moving that heat around and around so that way it gets an even heat. I don't like to keep it in one place for too long, so it, you can avoid melting your silver by accident by moving it as much as you can. And I check with the light to make sure there's no holes or gaps. And I'm gonna cool it off with some cold water again. And we're gonna move over to the saw station. Okay, here we are. I'm getting my saw out, and I also like to use this little wax tube on my saw. It basically helps glide the saw against the silver. It's really good for any tools, any cutting tools. I highly recommend it, especially if you're a silversmith or a goldsmith. You can't go wrong with easier sawing. So you'll see me pick off little pieces here and there. I like to save my scraps. There's actually a company I work with that will buy those scraps from me, so I try my best to save as much as possible. You'll even see me use a rasp later on, and I'll use my little blue cup you see up at the top there to catch the silver dust when I'm rasping, just so that I can get as much as possible, trying not to waste anything at all. And I'm gonna saw around once and then for a second time go back around and just get a little bit of excess off here and there. Perfect. So I got my square all done. Gonna put my saw and my wax away. And next I'm gonna rasp the edges and make it nice and flat around the edges there. Sorry about the train in the background. So I'm basically trying to sand down any of those raw edges and try and make a nice sort of bezel around the flat backing, just to be sure that there's no sharp edges, and it's nice and even as well. So the overall shape is symmetrical. I like to wash away any dust that I can that can't be saved. So I just dip that in some cold water and rub it with my apron. And I'm putting Flux on the back because now I'm going to put the bail on, which I pre-cut. There it is. That's also silver. So I put a little bit of Flux on that bail as well. I get it nice and centered. And then just double checking it. You guessed it, more solder. I put 3 solder chips on this, 1 on each edge and then 1 in the middle where the seam of the bail is, so that way it actually all solders together into a solid piece. And I just add a little bit of heat just where I need it, so that way everything comes together, and I try and flatten it out as much as I can. I do have to go back in with some heat to get one edge to flatten down, but it did so perfectly. And now it's one solid piece. I'm gonna pickle it. A pickle I use is basically vinegar and salt. It's like a non-toxic kind of pickle. A lot of people will use like similar to pool chemicals. I don't like to use that. Again, ventilation is super important, so my ventilation is not like perfect. That's the next thing that I'm working on in the studio. So I like to use as safe things as possible. So like wearing safety glasses, wearing a mask while I do this, and then using just vinegar, water, and salt for my pickle. It works perfectly. So I just did some brushing on that just to get off any of the butane that may have gotten stuck, any of the little just grime that gets in the corners and things like that. So I'm going to be setting the stone now. So I'm just popping that stone in there. I like to use the end of my rocker to sort of make sure it's flat, and then I'll go ahead around the edges. and I'll rock that bezel into the stone so that way it just covers the top of the edge of it just enough where it will keep it secure. Alright, and now it's securely set in this bezel cup setting. So the next thing I do is polish. This is my polishing box, and that's my polishing compound. Once I'm done, you can see it's kind of got buildup on the back of it and the front. So I pop it in the ultrasonic cleaner. This is a miracle box, let me tell you. It usually takes 10 minutes with hot water or 20 minutes with cold water, and it is perfectly clean. And this is how I set up my necklace. I have 4 big links, I have 2 medium links, and 1 small link. And then I also have my logo pendant. That'll go on the back. It's kind of like a little charm with my logo on it and the 925 stamp. And I'm just assembling everything, putting everything together, putting the clasp on. Now in this part of the video, you'll see me with a different pendant. It's not the purple turquoise we were just working with. It's actually going to be a black onyx. That one was just the one that I had prepped and ready to go for this particular chain. There's that black onyx, it's faceted. You can find that both on Instagram here and then in the Etsy shop as well. And I like to just give it a little bit of buff before I take photos of it. And there we have it. That's how I put that necklace together. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.